Creative Commons is, I think, a little over 5 years old now, I guess 6 years old. It was originally an idea that came up by a bunch of American law school professors who said copyright is very good for all rights reserved commercial content. It works fine, but its basic premise is you have to ask permission no matter what you do. And that there are actually a lot of people who would be willing to allow certain uses of their work without necessarily having to have everyone ask permission. And we would like to make the internet easier to use for those people without having to hire a lawyer each time they wanted to do something with somebody else. So in the old days, if production A wanted to work with production B, they would fly to Cannes, drink champagne, and their lawyers would come and then charge $5,000 and you would license this song for this movie or license this movie for this jurisdiction, and that was fine. But when you have independent artists trying to collaborate, or if you have Professor A trying to work with Professor B, the legal costs can exceed the value of the transaction, and we call that failed sharing. And so Creative Commons' fundamental idea is to prevent failed sharing. The internet allows all kinds of collaboration, all kinds of sharing technically, but at the legal layer it still fails because just like you used to have network engineers every time you connected computers together and pay them lots of money, and Google would have cost hundreds of millions of dollars if it weren't for open source and internet. Similarly, what's happened is that technology has allowed us to connect a bunch of things together, but the legal layer still requires lawyers for just about every kind of collaboration because just about everything that you do that involves content involves copyright. And so the idea was to create a new layer. The fundamentals of Creative Commons, first of all, we are not anti-copyright. So the idea is we're a user interface for copyright. We have lots and lots and lots of lawyers who understand copyright very well. And what we're trying to do is make copyright easy for people to use so that you don't have to hire a lawyer to express what you want to do with your works. You can choose one of our licenses that we hope cover most of the things that people want. So all rights reserved is the default. It's very simple. If you want to do something with my work, ask permission. The problem is asking permission and granting permission requires lawyers. And so if, for instance, NHK, the television broadcaster that I work with, during the inauguration, they wanted to use a photo of Obama. Well, luckily there's a Creative Commons version of the photo of Obama, and luckily NHK lawyers know the license, so they can say, okay, we have to provide attribution, and we can use a picture without sending a fax to the White House. Well, so the White House was saved all this money of having to reply to 100,000 faxes, and 100,000 television stations, if they actually had read the licenses and knew them, would have prevented, because in that case, Obama doesn't mind having his picture used, and the television network probably would provide attribution. So there are many cases where it doesn't make sense to require somebody to ask permission. Right? So that's sort of the fundamental thing. What we do is we have 6 different licenses, which are various combinations of several things that we think people would like to choose. So we did a survey. Over 90% of people said they would like attribution when people use their work. So attribution is a default, is in all of our basic default licenses. The other questions that we sort of surveyed and figured out that people have different views on is whether they want to allow commercial use or not. We find that 2/3 of people would rather not have commercial reuse. So 2/3 of people choose the non-commercial choice. Another one is derivative works or not. So documentary producers and many photographers don't like people modifying their work, whereas a lot of musicians don't mind remixes, some do, so you can decide allow derivatives or no. If you allow derivatives, the other choice that you have is, do you want the results to be forced to be shared back to you or not? So for instance, Trent Reznor in Nine Inch Nails, for Ghost, he used a Creative Commons non-commercial share alike, which basically means that fans can remix his work, they can share the work, they can't sell it, and all of the derivatives have to be made available back to the community. And so it creates a community of body of work for the community. So what you do is you pick one of those licenses. We have a little, if you go to the web page, there's a little wizard where you answer the questions and it spits out which license you should use, and then it creates a little graphic that you can put on your website or in your whatever, and that shows little icons about what you can do. So you could say the most permissive is attribution only. You can do, like my website, you can do anything you want with my work as long as you provide attribution, which is interesting because many commercial websites don't provide attribution, and so I have to tell them. But the other extreme is, Creative Commons, non-commercial, no derivatives, and things like that, which are very restrictive. The thing that our point is that we don't try to tell you which license to choose. We try to help you choose the license that's best for you. Most professional musicians, the right license is a non-commercial license, so that they can continue to make money from commercial use, but maybe allow their fans to share their music on file sharing sites or MySpace or something like that, and I'll describe a little bit more about that. On the other hand, if our government is spending, the U.S. government is spending a lot of money on creating what they're calling open courseware, we think that should be on the most liberal license that allows commercial reuse because it's using taxpayer money initially. So depending on the application, we would recommend a different license. But the basic idea is that everybody probably has some choice that they would like to make, and we want to create an easy way to make that choice. And in addition to this icon, we have when you click it, you get a deed, which is a sort of human readable thing in 56 different languages that describes what you can and can't do with your work. So you can use this work for non-commercial use, but you have to do this and you have to do that. And then we have a lawyer-readable deed that lawyers can read, which is the actual big, thick contract that clicks through to, and also ported to 56 jurisdictions that you could actually take to court. Our first Arabic license will be ready next month, or actually November, but the idea is that it's in the local language, ported to the local law. And so the reason this is useful is if you're a Croatian television channel and you want to license something from a Japanese artist, you can look at the license, read it in Croatian, and understand what it is. You don't need to pay for a bunch of legal translators.
How hard is it to make sure that these translations actually mean the same?
It's a lot of work. That's the majority of the work that we do. So we have people in 80 countries, and we have MOUs with organizations in each of the 56 jurisdictions. And so, for instance, Korea, we have a federal judge, a law school. We have the University of Beijing in China, and so we try to find the best legal minds in each of the countries to make sure that the license, and it's a very rigorous process. So they first port the license, they translate it back to us, they tell us what the differences are, we do public comment, we involve all the legal experts in that country, and so and the other thing that we do is we version the licenses. So when we went from version 2 to 2.5, it was because Wikipedia said we want to redefine attribution to not only be individuals but to be able to be projects. There's a whole argument about whether we should allow DRM. There's a whole discussion about what non-commercial means. So we will continuously get input from all these different industries and all these people in 80 countries, and the licenses should represent sort of the current consensus view of all these constituents. And right now, Rights Collection Societies, for instance, is a group that we're talking actively to try to figure out how we could change our licenses, for instance, to make it easier for them to use it. So the licenses are a product of a really big, massive pain in the ass process.